Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to Slimpy Learn. We are honored to have you join us today for digitalization and what it means to IT professionals with your host, Krishnar Kumar from Mindtree. My name is Richard, and after this intro, I'll be mostly in the background helping Krishnar Kumar, or KK, so that everything goes smooth. Before we start, let's just go ahead and have a hello and make sure that our audio is coming through. I have a note in here. Oh, excellent. I see from, I hope I say the name right, Udalak. Audio is coming through. And let me also just test to make sure we get, oops, we're still missing Krishnar Kumar's audio up here. Let me just get him on here. For some reason, they haven't moved him up to the panelist side. Give us just a moment here. Go. And sometimes, every once in a while with these webinars, we do run into a little hiccup. That does happen. Give us just a moment to get Krishnar Kumar up here, because I want to make sure we have a sound check with him before we dive in to all the excitement. Make sure his microphone's also working. So let me go ahead and do this, because I always do a general introduction. Not that KK needs an introduction from where he's coming from, but let me go ahead and do my basic introduction for the setup, and then we'll get Krishnar Kumar on here and get him set up. So today is digitalization and what it means to IT professionals. Krishnar Kumar comes from Mindtree. It doesn't need a whole lot of introduction, but we'll give him a brief one. He was the president and CEO of the IT services at Mindtree, then became the chief executive, office and manager, and over the last couple of decades is now executive chairperson for the company. For those who aren't familiar with this form of webinar, I want to introduce you to the chat setup. Already some of you have gotten in there and sent notes back and forth. If you can just say a quick hello to KK, let him know you're excited to be here. And this also, yeah, we have a couple people having audio trouble. So if you're having audio trouble, try coming back in with a phone. Let me just put a quick note in there. I see someone's already got that in there. So if you don't have an audio, come back in with the phone, or if it's coming in real slow. Hello? Oh, great. Ashish, thanks. I appreciate that. Dominic, excellent. I see you coming in here. Hello. Great to have you guys aboard. So go ahead and use this for your questions. The way it works is that KK will be on for the first half hour, 35 minutes. And then we'll take those questions, and I'll go through them, and we'll see how many we can get through in the last 15 minutes for a question and answer period. Share your experience. If you hear something awesome, brilliant, interesting, insightful, and you want to share it in your social channels, whatever your social channels are, Facebook, LinkedIn, tweet, you can use the hashtag SLWebinars. That way people can find it, and you'll make them wish they were here. Go ahead and sit back, relax, have a cup of coffee, tea, or if it's evening where you're at, maybe a glass of wine, and enjoy. You didn't come here to listen to me, so let's go ahead and get KK on board here. So without any other ado, let me jump in and let's let KK jump in and take over. I'm excited to be here, and I'll be in the back for any questions, KK, that you need. And I'm excited to have you here today. So after that hiccup, we can jump right into digitalization and what it means to IT professionals.
Thanks so much, Richard. All of you on the webcast, it's a pleasure joining you today. So I think this question of digitization is being talked about in different forums, many times in the context of the Indian IT industry. Yeah. So the news around and what is being talked about in the media is the Indian IT story over? And I presume all of you on the call are reading media reports about it, and many times I think these are very short-sighted views. So let me really share with you what I've been seeing in terms of transition over the last couple of years, and more than anything else, how does the future really look like? So some of the indicators based on which people think that the story of the Indian IT industry is over is that the industry growth rate is slowing down. What used to be in the 60% in the early 2000s got down to the 30-40%, and today probably the industry growth rate, many of you would have seen the NASSCOM forecast for this year, is that it's going to be between 7 and 9%. So slowing industry growth rate is being linked to the story of the industry over. Again, if you compare with many global industries, very rarely any industry grows at double digit for a continuous period of time. There are many industries, if you take metals or if you take even consumables or if you take even high-end appliances or things like car, if you get a growth rate of 2 to 3% on volume basis, it's a good growth. So my argument would be that slowing industry growth does not in any way indicate that the days of the industry are over. It is true that the legacy spends are declining because the Indian industry, as well as IT services in the globe, be it IBM or Accenture, have been engaged in a lot of supporting legacy spends on which the clients' existing businesses are growing. With the market as well as business model pressures of clients, clearly the legacy spends are growing. But that again, I would argue, is not an indicator that the industry's days are over. The digital revenues, which is probably one of the bright spots in the industry, which is where I think I'm going to share with you the exciting opportunities ahead, is growing, but that's still small. But one thing the industry has to sort of take cognizance of is that in this transition, there are going to be new winners, which means companies which look at this transition, or even people like you who are professionals in the industry. There are going to be people who are going to win and win big time, and there are people who are going to lose out. So there are going to be new winners amongst organizations, amongst individuals, and there is going to be new competition because there are going to be both new type of people who are going to come into the industry, the creative people whom we have never seen becoming a part of the industry, or for that matter, companies which are really advertising agencies, which are morphing into more digital service agencies. So there's going to be both new winners and new competition, which you have to deal with. There are also other things which are impacting. The economic factors are not that supportive. If you look at developed economies, they've been on a negative interest rate for probably the last 8 to 9 years, and the economy in real terms is not growing substantively, which itself is a sort of dampener for technology spends. The social factors are also not conducive because the industry is a global industry, and if you need to really get value out of it, you need to have free movement of professionals. Unfortunately, politicians see this as a big negative on their vote bank. So all of us have been reading about the negative connotations of or the implications of tightness coming on H1B, or markets like Singapore almost trying to stop immigration, or even markets like Australia or UK tightening their visa regulations. So social factors are really not conducive. And political factors, which is again linked to social, is that more and more politicians are getting bothered about their vote bank, their country, without looking at the larger element of efficiency and goodness, which will come by free movement of professionals. But if you look at technology, I think in the future is going to impact in 4 fundamental ways. I'm not going to get into the depth of some of this, but as a summary, more and more organizations are going to look at consumers as individuals, which means practically every product or service is going to be individualized for that individual consumer. There are going to be massive disruption of the channels. We have seen that physical branches have reduced by 50%, so intermediation of channels is a reality. But beyond this, I think today we are able to look at data in a far more elegant way by which we can use data for real-time actions in configuring products and services. And that is going to be one of the big change, and all of this is going to drive a big change, which is leading to software and services really becoming all pervasive. While the pundits who are painting a doomsday of the IT industry say that, oh, the IT industry is just growing by 2-3%. But if you really take the covers away, where the spend is really declining is really in hardware, whereas the software and services, the growth is substantive. In fact, in the period between 2012 and 2016, the spend on software and services has only increased, and this trend is going to be conducive for IT professionals because there's going to be more and more investments which is done in software and services. And this is leading to a dramatic increase. So if you look at in terms of numbers, and I'm really referring to the chart on the right hand side of the slide, there is almost an incremental spend of 250 billion in services and software. So all of us who are a part of this this engagement, we are all primarily delivering services in software and services. So it's a great opportunity for us. We need not get bothered that the hardware spend or the infra spend is declining by 55% because that's really going to impact people who make computers, people who build data center products and so on. But the services and software is really growing, and that is really the big opportunity. This is a slide from the McKinsey Global Institute. What they predicted is that the global spend on technology and services will touch $4 trillion by 2025. Which is a substantive number. In fact, there's no other industry which can arguably say that the spend is going to be 4 trillion. But there is going to be an interesting mix change, which means that 60% of this is going to get driven by digital technologies. And even by 2020, they anticipate 65% or the digital spend to go to about 35% of the overall spend. And that in 5 years will really become 60%, which is a majority of it. Today, it's probably in the 10-15% level. So even within the next 3-4 years, we're going to see a big transition in digital, which necessarily means as professionals, we need to get ready for this change by reskilling ourselves, which is what I'll touch upon in the subsequent part of my presentation, coupled with some of the big changes which I'm seeing in organizations. So if you look at the Indian IT industry, while there might be people who call it a doomsday, I believe the real opportunity in the Indian IT industry is just beginning. I shared with you the enterprise spend of 4 trillion in 2025, and today the Indian IT industry is about 140 billion in terms of revenues. There is a great opportunity in digital, and clearly market estimates are that there will be $50 billion of business for the Indian IT industry in the next 4 to 5 years, which itself is a substantive increase from what it is currently. But this has to be looked at in the context of some key market transitions. And what are these market transitions? Let me call out the key ones. One, I think every company is seeing itself as a technology company. Earlier, companies used to view service providers as the experts, and they used to have limited expertise on technology within the company. But today, technology becoming the core of how a business is being run. Every company is seeing itself as a technology company, which means as professionals or helping or serving a company, we need to be experts in what we do. Otherwise, customers will really not have the trust and the confidence in us delivering those services. The pace of change is very high. And market growth also over the next 5 to 10 years will be in the low teens, which means necessarily every player who has to become relevant has to win market share. New disruptive technologies, be it big data or be it analytics or artificial intelligence, they are going to change the way in which the engagements are run. Customers want it with more speed and agility. So I think we need to understand a different operating model, which leads to my next point, that innovation and speed is going to be at least 10 times what it is today. And clearly the decision making is going to get far more democratized. We have to go beyond dealing with just the CIO to now have the capability to deal with the chief marketing officer, to deal with the chief data officer, and so on. So what does the future look like? One, organizations are getting flatter and flatter, which means that obviously there'll be more responsibilities at each level. But also for the Indian IT industry, I many times say, because the industry has grown so fast, everybody gets into the mindset of saying, I need to get promoted every 2 years, which itself is a cause for motivation. Those days are going to go away because organizations are getting faster. Agility is the only way to survive and succeed, both for organizations and individuals. Automation and artificial intelligence will have an impact on jobs. And here I really want to stress one. While automation will have productivity improvements and will have impact on jobs, there are going to be a new type of job which is going to get created, which means that the pace of job addition may not be the same as what it has been in the peak of the IT industry, but clearly this industry is still going to be a net job creating industry, but the type of roles and type of jobs are going to be very different. And for people who are getting to part of the industry, decision making is going to get more complex. So because the organizations are flatter, you'll have to make decisions, and responsibility and accountability for decisions will need to get pushed down. So whether you're a person who has entered the company tomorrow or you have spent 5 years and you're managing a small team, you have to be responsible for the results and outcomes, and consequently you will be answerable for that. So if I were to put these market transitions and what are the changes which are happening at the customer end, the digital workforce of tomorrow, and I'm sure all of you are wanting to become a part of it because the opportunity is real and it's going to be large, you will need to handle increasing customer expectation, because today's customer is not satisfied if you just deliver what he has told you to do. He wants you to bring in new ideas, innovate in the context of his job and business, and be in a way value adding to him. You have to learn new disruptive technologies. It could be virtual reality or augmented reality, it could be automation, it could be IoT. You have to learn the new disruptive technologies. Beyond that, I talked about customers wanting everything to be delivered faster and quicker. You need to learn new engineering methods. Obviously, you need to learn the agile methods in engineering. You need to learn DevOps, because those are the ways in which products or services or solutions are going to be engineered in the future. Clearly, you need to have an appreciation for new trends like artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation. And how will you really treat it as an opportunity rather than thinking of it as a threat where it could potentially take away your jobs? Which really leads on to a very important aspect which all of you in this webcast need to think about. You not only need to have an engineering mindset, which is what a majority of our IT professionals have, or for that matter, globally all IT professionals tend to stay with an engineering mindset. You also need to build your business capabilities, because you need to see technology in a business context. So you need to build business capabilities. You need to build social capabilities, because in the world of the future, you can find solutions only when you collaborate, which means you need to build your networks. You need to be in a collaborative and social mindset. So if I had to leave 3 tips on what you need to be doing, I would say the headline would be you need to be on a continuous reskilling journey. You cannot stop saying that, okay, I have mastered Struts and Java, some version of it, but you need to be on a continuous reskilling journey. And you need to build expertise in some area where externally you are acknowledged in the market as an expert. Today's people who probably, if there's a fresher who's coming into the IT industry, I'm sure some of the participants here are freshers. You need to think of working towards a full stack capability, which means you just can't say, I'm only somebody who knows coding in a specific language, but you need to know the implications of putting that code on production. How do you manage the infrastructure? How do you really test it? You need to have the full stack capability of doing it. And beyond that, I think you need to be multi-skilled. You need to understand the security implications of what you're doing. You need to understand what are the ways by which you can automate some of the work which you've done. So some of those horizontal skills, you also need to have an appreciation, the ability to deploy it in the solution which you build. So the next slide, please. So what does this mean to you? Click. One, as I said, because organizations are getting flatter and flatter, you cannot delegate upwards. And neither, if you're a leader of a team, you cannot carry the monkey for your team. you need to ensure every individual is accountable, which leads the thing of saying the buck stops with you. It is very important each of you start thinking in terms of what is your personal brand. What is it that you're an expert in, by which you are known outside your teams as well as outside your organization, and what is the differentiation you have influence in your company's offering. Today, being a part of the technology team, you tend to stay away from market offerings, but in the new world, you as a multi-skill professional, you will be expected to participate and contribute to what offering your company takes to the market. So that's a very key capability which you need to build. Next slide, please. And like I said, your mindset has to change from a unidimensional way of making decision to complex decision making, where you need to optimize several parameters, which at sometimes would almost look like a unsolvable problem. But the reality is you have to deal with complex situations, make decisions real time, and be comfortable with making wrong decisions also. So that is really some of the things. So if I were to just capture in summary what I had sort of shared with you over the last 20 minutes, I think the opportunity for the IT industry in the next 10 years is humongous. Never has been a time that technology has become so core to enterprises. So it's a great time to be within the technology industry. But being within that, I think you have to change. And you alone are responsible for the change. And there are some questions which have come. Maybe in answering those questions, I'll try and capture some of the action which each and every one of you will have to start doing.
Excellent. And so for those in the webinar, if you have questions, go ahead and post them in the chat because I'm watching for those. And then we have our own set of questions that are very common that people ask a lot. The first one is, KK, when there is need to train millions, and I mean, the industry is getting that size, of tech professionals, how to do this at scale and ensure the competitiveness of the Indian IT industry?
That's a very interesting question, Richard. I think that's a question which is on the top of the minds of most IT companies now. Clearly, I think the observations which you brought out saying it needs to be done at scale, what I would add to that is it needs to be done at scale and be done in a very effective manner. What I certainly think companies have to change is the way in which they currently deliver the pedagogy or the training. I think it will move far more to an experiential learning mode, and more companies will start using the mock type of operation. Hello? The MOOC type of operations to get to people on scale. Clearly, I think the ability to sort of treat at scale will also come not just in terms of doing some of the skill building.
Making a conference. Digitization.
Hello? Yeah. So I think companies will have to think in terms of using certainly technology to deliver this training on scale. They have to think through of how the pedagogy will change, from just being classroom oriented training to more experiential learning. They need to see how they can leverage external partners to really deliver this on scale and in a manner where it's impactful. I see those three as being important to deliver in scale and to ensure that the competitiveness of the Indian IT industry is retained.
Excellent. So let's skip to the next question. Oops. There we go. You would agree that employers are creating courses to upskill the workforce? Do you think employers are taking it seriously and utilizing them? And given my career history, this is an important one for me too, because I came from like a pigeonhole in technology and suddenly found myself not skilled in today's technologies. So I'm excited about this question.
That's a very interesting debate because I think there are two sides of the story, and typically it tends to be painted that while we've done all the work, employees are not taking it seriously and utilizing them. I don't think the picture is just that. Like I mentioned earlier, in particularly new areas which are evolving, be it artificial intelligence, machine learning, or in terms of virtual reality, yeah, the pedagogy of how these concepts are taught need to be very differently thought through. Yeah, I think what currently organizations are doing is they're really using online as a channel to or give employees access to a lot of content, but that does not give people the understanding of the concept and the ability to apply that concept on a specific business scenario, which is why I think there needs to be a change from the organization side to make learning far more an impactful and fun filled one. Which means if you're really doing an experiential driven training, if you take an area like IoT and sensors, how do you really create the content whereby doing people are learning some of the concepts? In doing so, they'll fail a couple of times. How are they able to learn out of those failures? And how do you create an ecosystem where people can learn at their own pace? Because particularly if you look at new technologies, I think each person would have his own capability to learn at a pace. So I think from the organization side, the thinking on how the training or pedagogy is delivered needs to dramatically change. And the moment it's made far more impactful and fun filled, I think employees will start utilizing it better and will also gain from the knowledge which as they go through the training. Over to you, Richard.
Excellent. And let's go ahead and go to the next question. Oops, we lost our switch in the back a bit. If you can go ahead and there we go. For people who are looking at growing in their IT career, which skills are becoming more and more relevant? What's on the top of the chart this month?
Well, I think in IT, it's always been a question of what is the flavor of the month. And I guess depending on who the person who's writing the article, they tend to sort of change flavors. But what I do see is for professionals who are wanting to make an impact in this industry, I think you need to be clear what is it you're going to be an expert in. And there is enough opportunities in every potential new area which is coming up. Immense opportunities in big data, immense opportunities in advanced analytics. There's immense opportunities in artificial intelligence and how do you apply it in the context of business? How do you sort of extend it to machine learning? Or how do you drive efficiency and new services through IoT? Or how do you bring in virtual and augmented reality in the context of delivering customer services? But it's important that people take a call in terms of where is it that they really want to be an expert in, because I think you cannot afford to be everything to everybody, because the world of tomorrow doesn't really support a jack of all trades. You have to be an expert in one. But beyond focusing on the area on which you have to gain deep capability and expertise, understanding of business is also becoming more and more clear, which is when you'll be able to really map a technology into a business problem. So which is the segment you're going to focus on? Are you going to understand the retail business well, or are you really going to understand process of manufacturing very well? So the business understanding is also extremely important. And finally, is really the social skills are probably becoming very, very important. Gone are the days when you say, you know what, I'm a coder, I'm going to sit in my computer and just knock away code. Today, I think if you really want technology to be adopted, you must have the ability to sort of put that case in front of a business user convincingly, which means your ability to network with business is important. Many times you may run into a situation where you don't know the solution to the problem, so you need to reach outside your circle, which means the ability to collaborate outside a network, outside your team, outside your organization is becoming very critical. So I think in the technology space, there is enough opportunities, but choose where you want to be an expert. Clearly, beyond technology, understand the domain well, where you can apply it. And while you do all of this, continue to work on improving your social skills. That is really what I think will be a thing. Over to you, Richard. I see the next question, which is really about Mindtree and what do we follow to drive a learning culture. No,
Okay,
one, I think,
before we jump in this question, I had like two questions that directly related to the previous ones.
yes, sure.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the multi-skills, where we have dev test analysis, integrating horizontally, that came from Ashish. Then I had Silent Guru. Yeah, we have some interesting names that come in here. But we come from Joshi having both dev and testing skills. Can you speak specifically on the testing skills and development, and how, if you're focusing on those, how that looks like in the IT world and building your own skills up?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question, and I think it came from Ashish. Ashish, what I see in the future is that while in the past we have had people where roles were fairly narrowly defined, saying, okay, he's a developer, he's a tester, and those distinctions or walls, I see them as blurring. Obviously, if you've had a career as a tester, and again, I think testing is probably one of the most value-added roles within as you build a solution. Today, the way to build a skill is from manual testing, you move to automated testing, you learn tools, and consequently, how do you improve the efficiency and the way in which you create test cases. But I think in the future ahead, or even now, you really need to think in terms of becoming what I would think is a full stack engineer, where beyond your testing capability, you have the ability to understand the infrastructure on which you're going to run, or how do you put it on production, which means you'll need to understand servers, you'll need to understand storage at really a user level, so that you're able to take into account some of the constraints and how do you need to operate in an environment to optimize the infrastructure. You certainly need to develop some bit of coding skills, because a lot of the future is going to be about how you're going to build on platforms. And in that world, you'll move more to a scripting world where basics of programming are very, very essential. So I think in the future, these narrow defined roles as developer, tester, and infrastructure engineer, I think are really going to get merged, and you'll increasingly have what we term as full stack engineers, who understand right from the development to the testing to the production upload and infrastructure, and really ensuring end to end it ties up.
Excellent. And now we can jump in to the question on Mindtree. I'm definitely familiar with Mindtree since it's a global product. And, very excited about that one. What are some of the best practices which Mindtree follows to build a learning culture?
See, I'll just sort of leave 3 or 4 themes which I think are very important, which is what we've tried driving over the last several years in Mindtree. One is, I think, to set a learning culture, the drive has to come from the top. So what we necessarily say is all our leaders, we want them to demonstrate that they're continuously learning, which means we or ask them to do sessions in our internal trainings to share their learnings, which means from the top, the culture of learning is driven, which I think is a very, what I would say, almost a fertility or a ground condition in any organization to create that learning culture. Beyond that, I think the changes which we have done in the last 2 years is a move from very classroom oriented training to what we call a very experiential based training, where clearly we don't have class sessions. Everybody is working on a live problem. They work in groups of 8. In fact, we have created a physical and intellectual infrastructure in a place called Bhuneshwar, where we have 1,000 place resident thing, which is divided into cohorts of 8, which means people live in groups of 8, 24/7. They're solving the problem, and that's how they're really learning. So this whole focus on experiential learning through people living together and solving a problem is another thing which I think we have sort of done well. We think it's really creating a big impact. The third aspect is practitioners really being the mentors. Because we do believe while there could be specialized people who can teach in a classroom type of environment, we think that people should learn from mentoring, which means you really teach them to fish, not fish for them. So how do we really make practitioners become good mentors by which they create the next workforce of tomorrow? And the last aspect is we have really made training very much a self-driven activity. We have an online portal called Yorbit where people can go and decide and create their training goals, and they do it at their own pace. There's nothing in the organization which maps them. But of course, we do recognition because they get points, assuming in a domain you clear the what is called a 101 program, a 201 program, and a 301 program, which is the expert in a domain. They get points and consequently they get recognized. That's the recognition part of it. But the urge to learn and what I want to do is really the responsibility is on the individual. Because we think only when individual responsibility will be there, people will drive the change to do stuff. And that's where I think the learning also becomes far more embedded rather than them just going through a training program. I see these 4 are some of the key elements of our best practices in Mindtree.
Excellent. And your guidance to employees who are always anxious about their job, how should they be shaping their future?
That's a very relevant question, Richard. In fact, many times I meet both within Mindtree and outside as an industry sort of person. I meet groups of people, and many times, probably due to the external messaging which is happening, a lot of people are anxious about what is their future. I would think there has never been a better time in terms of future for the IT industry, both in terms of the opportunities as well as what is it that you can credibly aim to achieve within the IT industry. So while the opportunity is there, I think there's a lot of responsibility for you to really look at this not as a problem. Because yes, legacy spending is going to go down, so the number of jobs which were there in the legacy part of services is also going to go down. But are new jobs or new roles getting created? I would certainly think so. In terms of people who deliver exciting customer experiences, because that's becoming a very key part of digital. That sort of a role has never existed in the IT industry. So if you can start thinking like a customer, say what are the technologies, what are the type of ways by which you will make the consumer experience exciting. So there are many new roles which are coming, but then that clearly means that you have to build your technology skills in the new disruptive areas and really be an expert in one. Clearly build your business skills, because you need to then see how these technologies can be deployed in a business context. So you need to build understanding of the domain and your business skills. And lastly, you must sort of constantly try and keep improving on your social skills so that you can collaborate with a larger ecosystem, bring in some of the innovation which is happening in that ecosystem in the context of your customer, and consequently also start gaining the credibility and the position of being an expert in the field in which you work. So I would think that while external messaging might tend to be negative, there has never been a better time, but the responsibility is on you to try and change and really reskill as well as add on entirely new capabilities which you may not have today. But as you keep doing that, you'll continue to gain the benefits of success. Over to you, Richard.
Okay. So thank you, KK. That was wonderful. Boy, we have so many questions from so many different areas coming in, and we do have a lot of people on the webinar for those people, if you're counting. um, so trying to pull them together, I see a few trends in the questions. One of them, maybe we can start from more specifics. Like if you're somebody who's on the, I hate to say on the bottom because as you were talking about, there's less layers. So you're not really on the bottom; you're more horizontal. But somebody who's in their beginning of their career, or is doing an internship, or is trying to move up the ladder, what kind of IT fields are the top ones right now? There's a lot of questions on machine learning and AI. I noticed there's somebody mentioned security on there. We have Java developer, doing Android and OSI. Kind of came from all directions on that. So I don't know if you have an answer for the people who are working on the career from the bottom, or starting, or just have been in it for a short period and trying to figure out where to go.
What I'll do is I'll probably sort of give some of my thoughts on people who are at an entry level stage, who obviously have come in with an intention that maybe there might be great opportunities in the IT industry, and might also have the anxiety of saying, did I really make the right choice in getting into this industry? Yeah. I think probably in the case of people who have entered the industry, I think they are probably the best position, because unlike people who have spent 5-10 years in the industry, they have to unlearn a lot of things and learn new things. I think people who are just entering the industry, they really have no legacy. They can really start fresh. So which is why I think it's very important for them to understand what is the opportunity ahead of them, and how is it that they're continuously going to become experts in an area which they choose. It could be an area like artificial intelligence, but beyond understanding tools in artificial intelligence, or how do you combine artificial intelligence and big data so that you're really able to give to businesses the ability to take decisions on a real-time basis, which is based on a strong analytics as well as applying artificial intelligence to the data which are really sort of churning out. So many possibilities like this exist. You could certainly become somebody who looks at process and sees how do you really digitize this process for efficiency. Yeah, which really comes in more from a process background. So that's an entirely new opportunity available to you. So I don't think there's a limitation of opportunity. Clearly, you have to constantly keep looking out on how is it that technology is being adopted by customers, where is it I can add value, and consequently start putting your effort and energy into becoming an expert in that area. That is really the advice which I'd leave with you. And again, Richard, just as a thing, I agree with you. Probably if there are a lot of questions, one of the suggestions which came was that if you're not able to answer some of them, later on what I could do is I could pick up those questions and independently may do it through email, which could then be available to all the participants.
Okay, and we have at SimplyLearn, if you go to community.simplylearn.com, we have open forums there. If they want to put them in there, and we can certainly set you up with like your own forum for this or something like that, just to make it easy. And we also have other people coming in and answering those. So we have the full forum, and then if you want to supply an email, we can do that also. I have walking up the ladder. We have so we talked about people who are trying to form their career. What about project management? We have a lot of questions from Ashish and Divakar asking about the roles of project management practice. How much IT are they going to need to learn? How is there if they're doing a system analyst or solution architect, business analyst, all of those people in that particular level trying to figure out how to put the pieces together. How does this affect them?
See, the role which I think where maximum change of mindset has to happen is really the project manager's role. We've lived in a time where clearly project managers are playing a very key role of managing resources, managing clearly the schedules, and keeping the customer updated of the progress, and consequently planning risks and any other aspect of both assets which need to be deployed in the project. The fact is, a lot of them are getting automated. If you look at basic essential things in terms of project management, most mature organizations are implementing automated way in capturing some of the matrices with respect to how a project is being run, which necessarily means people who want to continue as project managers need to partly become application architects or solution architects, and that's the key value which they need to bring in the context of the project. Maybe a role like an application architect or a solution architect in a project team itself may disappear, and the project program manager will play that role in a combined manner because he's bringing in the value of his experience of application solutions to really architect that solution and then have the core team under him. Which brings me to the other point, even in terms of levels within project teams, I think levels are going to get flatter and flatter, which necessarily means as a project manager, people need to get far more hands-on because I think the span of control now, essentially for most project managers, may be anywhere from 15 or 20 to even sometimes maybe 50 people. I think that span of control is going to reduce, but clearly it's also going to reduce in a manner where there's accountability at the next level. So the project manager really needs to focus more on what are the key risks, have a hands-on understanding of the technology so that he can validate those risks and work out risk mitigation plans. The ability to be an expert in one key value add area in the context of the project, which would be application architecture, maybe security architecture, any one area where they can clearly add value being the expert in that. So there is going to be certain merger of roles which will happen. But beyond that, I think there could be very lateral opportunities for project managers because I think one of the key skills they still have is the social skills of interacting with customers and business. And I see, particularly as technology is getting deployed at a far more widespread scale in enterprises, there is a need for change managers to really manage the transition at the business side. So I would see a good number of project managers really becoming great proponents of change management and implementing that change or managing that change at the customer end. So I do see multitude of variations in terms of how potentially a project manager today can morph into the digital workforce of tomorrow. And I think each person clearly has to make a very conscious choice of making this transition. And particularly for them, I think it may not be an easy change because at the end of the day, they're used to doing something in a way in which they've done and they've done it for several years. So that ability to unlearn and learn new skills is going to be extremely important.
Excellent answer. Yes. And I have a number of questions that kind of continue along the project management. If you could address cost, because I guess, as a project manager, there's certainly, they have to figure out, you can't just start new projects without figuring out what it's going to cost the company, and it certainly costs money to train people. And then there was a number of people who are talking about how they feel like they're moving up in their project management roles in their company, and they get kind of hit a dead end with the company. I don't know if you've run into that problem of how do you get the company to start taking in the changes and know that they're in trouble if they don't make those changes. It's kind of a sales pitch, I guess, to the company itself.
So I think that's a very important point, Richard, the whoever has bought it. I think it's very important for companies to realize the need to change. Yeah. Because you can't leave it to the project manager alone to fight this. Because at the end of the day, I think they will then be left behind as lonely people who probably have to then face the customer as well as deal with the company which is not responsive to the change. Yeah. So I think the first change which is required is for the company to realize that what conversation they're having with the customers need to change, and how are they creating both a physical and an intellectual infrastructure to help project managers navigate through the change. Yeah. And clearly, from the customer side, while it is rational or not, there is clearly the pressure to reduce costs. So the customers really are just going to push for saying, oh, you know what, I don't care what you do, but I need a 15%, 20% reduction for the services which you have delivered. Which is where it's important that the company equips project managers to appreciate what is the way in which they can think of automation. How do they really even judge or evaluate that automation is relevant in the context of the project they're delivering? How is it that they get the real benefits out of it? What are going to be the adaptation, implementation issues? What is the change management which they need to be clear on? And how do they help them really manage that change? Yeah. So if these inputs or support does not come from the organization, then clearly I think the project managers will be far more challenged, because the demand from the customer is real, and it is actually today. It's not something which is of the future. Today's customers are demanding that. So the quicker project managers transition to acknowledge this demand from the customers and see how they can deliver this change, I think they can effectively manage this transformation well.
Excellent, excellent. And we are at the end of our time. I don't know if you are available for another few more minutes to field another question or two.
Sure, Richard, I'm available.
Okay, I was just making sure on that. And also, we have created a forum. There's a link for it right there here at Simplilearn. So if you have additional questions, this is a public forum. You can go in there, and I think you do have to register to actually post the questions or something like that. But you can go into that link, and they'll take you to the open forum. And along the lines of, we still have a lot of questions that still come in on project management. There's a number of people who are asking about consultant. How does that fit into the business model? If you're a project manager or you're trying to have a consulting company, how do those come together so that the burden of doing sprints and that change can be absorbed by having another company step in, that you're not paying the full price for? You don't have a full-time employee who's going to be gone and you're not going to need in 6 months. Can you maybe touch on that just a little bit?
Sure, Richard. Again, just to share my perspective, I believe in the world of tomorrow, there would be a good percentage of employees who consciously choose to be what I call the mobile workforce, which means they're an expert in an area. They really don't want to get engaged with a company on a long-term basis, but would just like to work in that area for specific of time, and then what is their own passion. Now, internally within my organization, I've been saying we should prepare ourselves for an operating model where between 15 to 20% of our workforce is the mobile workforce. And that has huge implications on the project manager. While sprints in terms of the way in which it's structured, how do you prepare people for an agile model of doing stuff with. So what I was concluding was that I think it's a reality that project managers need to think in terms of teams where they have a percentage of mobile workforce which may not be full-time employees but are more experts. There could be an expert on big data who becomes a part of your project team for a couple of sprints and then he moves out. So managing mobile workforce, their aspirations, how to motivate them, again could be an area where you need to sort of think about, because these are individuals who will get motivated by what excites them, while probably, yes, some of them may have a commercial reason why they chose to be mobile workers, because they probably think their earning capacity is higher than that. But many will be based in terms of what is it that they want to do and how is it that they see their work recognized. So it's important to understand how to also deal, motivate, and get the best out of mobile workers, which also becomes very critical in the context of a project manager.
Excellent. Boy, that was, I wish we had like another hour to do this. We could spend all day. Krishna Kumar, thank you very much for being here today. Very wonderful presentation. I enjoyed that immensely.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Simply Learn team.
I'm glad to thank everybody else for being here who took their time out of their afternoon to come join us for the webinar, or your evening or your morning. Again, this is sponsored by Simply Learn. Come visit us. You can come to that link that we put in there if you want to have more questions. And if KK can get to them, that would be great. If not, we'll have also our experts in there. You can also, if you want a copy of the session, you can go to simplylearn.com and just let them know that you were here for this, and they'll send you a link once they format it and double check it. So you have a couple of different resources there to go back over the information. We do need to go ahead and close the webinar, and I wish everybody a wonderful day, evening, or morning, and wishing everybody happy learning and good luck with your careers in whatever direction they take you. Thank you again, KK. It's great working with you today.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks.